The Russian army has big problems with electronic warfare systems. The occupiers suffer huge losses at the front from Ukrainian UAV strikes and are unable to defend themselves. A Z volunteer who helps the Russian army spoke frankly about this. The Russian woman claims that the Ukrainian Defense Forces have complete control over the airspace with the help of drones. The Ukrainians are also doing great with electronic warfare. The air is blocked. The guys can't move at all. The sky is swarming with thousands of drones. Our commanders are great, of course. We are moving forward. But at what cost? Can the boys' lives be saved simply by giving them electronic warfare? Or do we not have electronic warfare in the country? I can't understand. We are shown at every iron how great we are, what kind of electronic warfare we have created. The best. But the guys don't have it. And the guys say that nothing works. Your know-how does not work. The infantry is being destroyed. They are being killed by the thousands. Can you do something? This already smells of treason. They report to us that we are moving forward, extinguishing everyone. Nothing of the sort. We are standing still. The boys cannot move 2 kilometers. Even if they take this point B, they will then be killed by these FPVs or artillery. The sky is completely under the Ukrainians. Completely. Wake up already, said the Z volunteer. She added that the Ukrainian troops, unlike the Russian armed forces, are doing well with electronic warfare. They successfully jam the vast majority of Russian drones. Drone operators flying uncrewed aircraft over Ukraine are constantly running into invisible shields, causing them to suddenly lose control of their drones as signals are severed. Electronic warfare has become as pervasive on the battlefield in Ukraine as drones are, jamming and confusing drones with traditional weapons alike. It's an unseen threat demanding frequent adaptation. Ukraine's special drone unit Typhoon told Business Insider that this hidden electronic warfare battle makes drone warfare much more complicated for operators. Electronic warfare refers to a variety of combat actions in the electromagnetic spectrum. For instance, jammers flood radio frequencies with noise. Signals can be scrambled and GPS systems can be spoofed. EW, as it is called for short, arose as a prominent countermeasure to the prolific use of cheap combat drones by both Ukraine and Russia.
Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Monday ruled are conceding territories during possible talks on a peace settlement to end the fighting in Ukraine. According to Associated Press, the Russian top diplomat mocked a question about possible territorial concessions his country would be ready to make during peace talks, claiming any turnover of territories would endanger Russians living there. Lavrov also denied Europeans a seat at the negotiating table, accusing them of intending to use a possible ceasefire to enable Ukraine to pursue fighting. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Lavrov and Putin's foreign affairs advisor Yuri Ushakov will fly to the Saudi capital later in the day to take part in talks set for Tuesday. Peskov said the talks will be primarily focused on restoring the entire complex of US-Russian relations, as well as organizing possible talks on the Ukrainian settlement and the meeting of the two presidents. Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff told Fox News Sunday that he and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz will travel to Saudi Arabia for talks on Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is leading a delegation to Saudi Arabia for direct talks with Russian officials in the coming days to seek an end to the fighting in Ukraine.
И вы хотите, чтобы даже мысль какая-то присутствовала на переговорах об урегулировании относительно того, что какие-то территории нужно еще уступить. Уступить-то как? С людьми, с русскими? Или без людей? С одними редкоземельными металлами? А только говорят, вот надо территориальные уступки, наверное. Для чего? Для того, чтобы там вот так же русских уничтожали, как сейчас их уничтожают в Курской области и в других областях Российской Федерации.
Это говорить вам об отношении Европейского парламента к Сербии и более широком смысле о Европе.
То есть философия-то у европейцев никуда не делась, поэтому я не знаю, что им делать за переговорным столом. Если они будут вот так выцыганивать какие-то лукавые идеи про заморозку конфликта, а сами по обычаю по своему нраву и привычкам будут иметь в виду продолжение войны, то зачем их туда приглашать?
In recent weeks, a series of provocations by the aggressor country, Russia, have taken place in the Baltic Sea. However, the Kremlin decided not to stop there and, in its own style, announced the blowing up of a foreign ship, cynically lying that Ukraine was planning to do so. The lie that Ukraine is planning sabotage in the Baltic Sea has begun to be spread by the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. These fakes were immediately picked up by Kremlin propagandists as well as Russian media outlets that call themselves opposition. Russian intelligence officers invented that Ukrainian special services were going to carry out a provocation with the assistance of their Western curators. Moscow is lying that Ukraine is trying to draw the alliance into a direct armed conflict with the Russian Federation. Russian intelligence officers did not stop there and invented that the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, together with the special services of European countries, is preparing attacks on representatives of the Russian non-systemic opposition and businessmen fleeing the law who live abroad. Now European countries are holding behind-the-scenes talks on large-scale seizures of Moscow's oil-exporting tankers in the Baltic Sea, according to 2 European Union diplomats and 2 government officials. They are also currently drafting new legislation to add legal heft to those efforts. The proposals being considered include using international law to grab vessels on environmental or piracy grounds, said the officials who were granted anonymity to discuss the private talks. Failing that, the country could go it on their own, jointly imposing fresh national laws to seize more ships further out at sea. Close to 50% of sanctioned trade in Russian seaborne oil is going through the Gulf of Finland, said Estonia's Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna. There are the environmental threats. There are the attacks we've had against our undersea infrastructure. Now the question is, what can we do with these ships? He told Politico, "We cannot block all the sea, but we can control more. There are lots of opportunities." The talks illustrate Europe's growing frustration that Russia continues to transport its oil and dodge Western sanctions by relying on an ever-growing shadow fleet, aging vessels with obscure ownership and unknown insurance. By doing so, Moscow has been able to preserve a key lifeline for its war efforts in Ukraine, given that oil and gas generate around half of the Kremlin's revenues.